Hello pros, welcome to this episode of Build Like a Pro TV. I'm Brian Egger, creator of Build Like a Pro, and in this episode we're going to talk about how to calculate your equipment costs. Today we're talking about the cost of equipment. And I know you guys watch this stuff and you think, wow, with the high quality production and the great script I put together, you must think I spent all my time doing this. Well, that's actually not true. I actually have a full-time job in the construction industry, and my job is working around equipment pretty much every day. A lot of the stuff we talk about today is actually principles I use every day in my job. As we go through this, just remember there's actually two different types of costs for equipment. One is the ownership cost. This cost is fixed and never changes. The other one is operating costs. Those costs are variable and only apply when you're actually using the piece of equipment. Ownership costs apply whether you're using the piece of equipment or not. It might be sitting in the yard doing nothing and you still have to pay the loan on it. That's an example of an ownership cost. Operating costs are basically things like fuel, oil, grease, anything that can be used up as that machine gets used. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what it actually costs to own a piece of equipment. When you go out and you get a piece of equipment, you have to pay for it, right? Well, whether you pay cash for that piece of equipment or you finance that piece of equipment, the money you spend on that is money you need to capture back in your estimates to cover the cost of that equipment. So what we talk about is ownership costs. There's a formula that goes into it of basically purchase price, which you pay for it, divided by how long you think you're going to use it. Now remember, what we're talking about is numbers that you are putting together to plug into your estimate. Your accountant will have different ideas of how you actually accrue the cost of your equipment, but we're not worried about that for right now. We're just worried about how much money you need to plug into your estimate so that you're covered to cover all these costs. I actually like to use for this is actually the purchase price divided by the hours that you think you're actually going to use it over the lifetime you own it. Now, again, this is all based on how you run your business. You kind of need to put together an idea in your head of how many hours total you think you're going to use that piece of equipment. That way you can get the hourly ownership cost for it. So the common formula for ownership is actually purchase price minus salvage value. Salvage value is basically what you would get from that piece of the machine when you trade it in and buy the next piece of the machine, or you just go ahead and sell the machine outright. I don't agree with that, and the reason being is because typically you're going to finance this piece of equipment when you buy it. Well, the bank isn't going to take a payment minus what you think you're going to sell it for every month. They're going to want the full amount of your loan payment. So if you're plugging numbers in your estimate of purchase price minus salvage value, you're not covering everything you need to make that monthly payment in your estimates. Now, there's another thing called depreciation that has to do with taxes, and it's really kind of boring, but your accountant's probably going to tell you that, hey, you can only depreciate so much a month. Well, your accountant's going to be right, but that has nothing to do with how much money we want to put in our estimates to actually recover the costs of what we're going to spend on this machine every month. Now, the next thing is operating costs. And before we talk about operating costs, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and please hit our subscribe button or the like button, or put some comments about questions you have, and we can answer that in future videos. Operating costs are what costs that are incurred as you actually run the machine. Now, obviously the biggest cost of the hourly cost is fuel. You're gonna have to put fuel in the machine to run. That kind of goes without saying, right? The other part of that is you're gonna have what they call FOG. FOG is fuel, oil, and grease. That is a formula that they use pretty much wherever you look about the hourly operating costs of equipment. Now we're going to run through an actual real-world example of how to calculate operating costs on a piece of equipment, but right now we're just kind of going over the principles of everything you need to make sure to include in your estimate. The other thing that needs to be in there is maintenance and repairs. Maintenance is anything that you're going to have to maintain on the machine as you own it. Things like hoses, tires, something that might wear out, like if you're running a Bobcat or something or a skid loader, you're going to have a cutting edge in the bucket. Eventually over time the cutting edge might need to wear out, need to be replaced. That goes into maintenance. Repairs are something like you might have some kind of major repair while you own it. You know, it could be a transmission or an engine or something. That is basically money you put aside to have when you have a major repair that is needed on that piece of equipment. Okay, example time. So the first thing we're going to say is you're going to go out, you're going to spend 65 grand on this skid loader. Now, you guys don't have to say, well, that's not going to cover it. That's way too much. We're just picking out numbers for this for right now. This, no matter what the numbers are, the formulas never change of how you actually go about calculating the cost. So, along with paying $65,000 for it, we're going to say we're going to run it 1,000 hours a year. That's basically 20 hours a week for 6 years. And after the 6 years, you're going to dispose of it and get another one. So it's pretty simple. You need to divide that 65,000 by 6,000 total hours you're going to own it, and you're going to end up with about 1083 an hour. Now, obviously, if you're not going to use it 1,000 hours, you're going to use it 500 hours. That's actually going to double that number. You're going to spend about $22 an hour. If you're going to use it 2,000 hours, that number is going to be cut in half. You only need to recover about $5 an hour. Just don't be too aggressive when you figure out how many hours a week you're going to use it, because you always want to err on the side of caution that recover more money in your estimate than you're actually going to need, and definitely don't short yourself. So let's move on to operating costs. Well, like we talked about, the biggest hourly operating cost is fuel. Now for the skid loader, I just plugged in 3 gallons an hour at $3.50 a gallon. That might be a good number where you live at. That might not be a good number for where you live at for the cost of fuel. But where I'm at, that will get us covered, and that pretty much has some float in that number so that if the price of fuel goes up a lot, I'm still covered in my estimate. Now, so 3 gallons an hour, you can see the math works out $10.50 an hour. The same thing, you can see how it's working out. Grease, I threw $1 an hour in there just to kind of cover you because a tube of grease costs what, 20 bucks? I threw $1 an hour in there. That'll get you covered for how much grease you're going to use. Maintenance, over the cost of the life of the machine, you might spend $15,000 on maintenance. This is going to cover things like tires. You're going to blow a hose every once in a while. You're going to lose a bolt out of it every once in a while. It's kind of hard to predict what the maintenance costs are going to be, but you basically take that maintenance cost divided by the total hours you think you're going to own it. Same thing with repairs. Now I plugged 15 grand in here. 15 grand really doesn't cover that much on a skid loader if you blow like an engine or a transmission or something, but this goes to, we just need to plug something in there to make sure that we're covered in our estimates. So you add all that up, what do we get? 20 bucks an hour. Okay, I know we're doing a lot of math here, and I'm trying to go through it fast. You guys can write this stuff down, do your own math. What we need to get is just the principles of how you actually go through and do this. And again, plug your own numbers into it, maybe based on past cost history, maybe based on your own forecasting of what you think you're going to need. But like I said, this is just the principles of how to actually do it. So we get to a total number. We're going to have $11 an hour for the ownership costs. We're going to have 20 bucks an hour for the operating costs. Add that all together, we get $31 to run this machine. Don't go out and run this machine for $31 an hour. If somebody calls you and says, hey, I just need some Bobcat work done, can you come over? I'll pay you by the hour to do it. This is just the actual cost. There's no markup in this cost to cover things like overhead. So this is bare cost. We'll cover overhead and how much margin you need to put on the cost in the future, but just keep in mind, this is just the bare cost that you need to plug into your estimate that will be marked up at the end for how much this piece of equipment is going to cost. And so that's kind of what we got for you today. I hope you guys enjoy it. Like I said, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell so that you get a notification when we come on. Put some questions in the comments. We'll answer them in the next episode. Go ahead and tell me that I did something wrong. We'll look at that too, and maybe I'll agree with you, maybe I won't. We'll see. But go ahead, interact with us, and until next time, keep building like a pro. Hello pros, welcome to this episode of Build Like a Pro TV. Today we're covering all the costs that go into your equipment. Hello pros, and welcome to this episode of Build Like a Pro TV. Today we're going to talk about how to calculate your equipment costs. So in this episode, it's all about how to calculate your equipment costs. Now this is something that sorry, neighbor's dog barking up like that. Let's try that again. Hello pros, and welcome to this episode of Build Like a Pro TV. Go ahead and check out our other platforms like buildlikeapro.com.
We have an Instagram page, Build Like a Pro. Facebook page, Build Like a Pro 1. Obviously, we're on Twitter at Build Like a Pro. And we also even have a LinkedIn page for Build Like a Pro. And definitely check us out on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button popping up on the screen right now. And don't forget to push that little bell so you get reminded